Hello and welcome to part two of, I should say, lecture two of part one. I'm actually experimenting with a different computer on this one, so we'll see how all of that goes in the process of things. All right, let's start where we left off, which was in the discussion of mainland Greater China facilities. And as you see, this list dates back to 2007, but what it shows you here is the number of the facilities highlighted in green, which are located in the Greater Pearl River Delta. 7 out of the 10. Now, since that time, of course, China National Convention Center, Shanghai World Expo Center have both opened, and others. So these numbers are not as current, but they do reflect the predominance of these facilities as they were in the Pearl River Delta. Note number 4, by the way, that the Shanghai New International Expo Center is not the Shanghai World Expo and Convention Center. That clarification, sometimes in English, the words are very similar, whereas maybe in Chinese it's not. But in this case, the China New International Expo Center is actually a pure exhibition center out by Longyanglu and the Maglev in the Pudong area of Shanghai, and of course the World Expo is the facility that we will talk more about in the second part. Now this gives you some of the largest venues in Beijing and Shanghai, and what you should see in this is, if you look at Beijing at the top, the largest facility, the China International Exhibition Center, is the new facility opened a couple of years ago out at the airport area. Now, the confusion here is the one above it is also called the same thing. Now, China World Exhibition Center is, I believe, the China World Center, which is the Shangri-La Hotel and a private entity. In Shanghai, when you look at the centers there, this doesn't include the Shanghai Expo, the Shanghai World Expo Center. But if you'll look down to the one called the Oriental Riverside, that's actually run by Regal Hotels. So some of these are actually hotel facilities. These are some shots of a couple of the Greater Pearl River Delta facilities. One, the Guangzhou International Convention Exhibition Center, which is actually a combination of facilities, which I believe one of the groups may be speaking about in class. And then the Shenzhen Convention and Exhibition Center just across the border near the Macau. Now, when we say Greater Pearl River Delta, I assume you know what we mean, but just to clarify, Greater Pearl River Delta is Hong Kong SAR, Macau SAR, and the Guangdong province area, which includes, of course, Shenzhen, Dongguan, Zhongshan, and others. You'll see the rapid growth figures there. I mean, just to show you the kind of growth that's going on in this area. And as a result, the cooperativeness that I'll talk about here later in the second part. But it's a strong economic growth and increasingly closer cooperation going on between the convention and exhibition industry within the whole Pearl River Delta. Let's talk about Guangzhou. Guangzhou is an interesting scenario because it's the political economic capital of South China, of course, but it's also one of the most active cities in the convention and event economy in China, as I'll talk about further with regards to the China Trade Fair, or Canton Trade Fair rather, which is the key area there. And you'll see the numbers in 2007 have only gone up since then. And the Guangzhou International Convention and Exhibition Center that I showed you earlier is now the largest in the world when you combine all the facilities together. Now, the Canton Fair has been the catalyst for this, and the Canton Fair itself started in 1957. And back then, the objective was, the difference between a fair here in terms of what we're talking about is the objective was to bring people from the rest of the world to see what the businesses were and the manufacturing was in mainland China. So the exhibitions would have been those in mainland China producing, manufacturing, and so on, clothing, other things in the process, whereas all the attendees were international. Now, the difference between that and an exhibition is an exhibition would be people perhaps from all over the world taking stands who were sellers, and the buyers are also coming in from all over, but also from mainland itself. Now that's more of the context of what the Canton Fair is today, but to give you an idea, that's how historically it happened. And as I mentioned, the center itself, the Guangzhou International Convention Center includes both the Luhua and Pazhou complexes, so it's a big facility in itself, and it's really made a major impact in that region. It's held 2 times a year, spring and autumn. In April was the 109th, and coming up at the end of October, 1st of November this year, is the 110th, and it's the largest fair in China. Now, this is the challenge that you face here is that this has been the focal point of why the facilities were built. So they were created for the fair and to promote trade. But the venues were built for that purpose. So what happens the rest of the year? You know, they say in the Christian religion, they say you don't build churches for Christmas and Easter. Okay, that's the scenario that we're dealing with here. We're trying to bring people in for 2 fairs a year, but what do we do the rest of the time? That creates price wars between facilities, convention venues, empty venues. During that period of time, some even get turned into office buildings. Now, these are the major facilities in Guangzhou. I won't go into them in a lot of detail because I believe one of the groups will be talking about Baiyun, which is the 3rd one down, and of course they have the International Convention and Exhibition Center with its 2 complexes. The top one here shown is the Baiyun Center, and below is a part of the Luhua complex of the Guangzhou International Convention and Exhibition Center. Shenzhen, our neighbor to the north, special economic zone. You know, when I was first living here in the early 1990s, Shangri-La was building at Lowu, first major hotel there. Shenzhen was a farm town, basically, when you were young. When you were born, it was a farm town, and now 15 million people, more than Hong Kong itself, living there. Major changes in terms of the high-tech industry and what they attract to this convention center from all over China, and the consumer shows that they do as well. The major facilities there, the highlight in this is the Shenzhen Convention and Exhibition Center, which I've showed you pictures of previously. That was built in 2004. That's just across the border from Macau. You take the extra MTR that runs the actual metro system underneath there to the center itself from there. Very close proximity to us. Here's a shot of it right here. Very close proximity back and forth to Hong Kong and to, of course, the Shenzhen airport as well. Macau. I'm not going to say as much about Macau. We're going to go see Macau, but to me, Macau is really 2 entities. Macau is the city, as I'll call it itself, where the Macau Tower and Tower Convention and Entertainment Center is located, which is the main convention facility run by the government there. And then you see a number of other potential convention venues as well. But the other part of Macau is the themed integrated resorts, and particularly those on the Kodai Strip that we're going to go to see, the Venetian, City of Dreams, Galaxy, and others. Now, MGM and Wynn right now are in the city, but Wynn has just received approval to also build another themed integrated resort on the Kodai Strip. So the question is, and one we might want to ask while we're there, is where does the growth end, or does it continue to keep going? And I apologize, this slide doesn't come out too well on the background here, but what we're looking at here is a rendering of Macau. And if you see at the lower left-hand corner, lower right-hand corner, or the lower left-hand of the map itself, is where the Kodai Strip is, where we're going to be visiting. If you cross the water to the other side, then you see the main area of Macau, where the Wynn, the MGM, and of course the convention center of the city itself are. Now, one of the challenges that Macau has is its transportation issue. Getting there on a ferry is not exactly how everyone wants to go from a convention and meeting perspective. The bridge is in the works. We'll talk more about that, but it's still a ways off before that actually happens. It might affect more perception than it does reality. The other part is infrastructure, building the highways to get back and forth between the areas. And of course, one of the transportation issues related to that is when the Venetian opened, there wasn't enough taxis, there weren't enough buses. They had to build their own, create their own rather, and that's essentially what's happened with all of the integrated resorts. They've had to create their own transportation systems. Human resource issue, where do you find the people? Macau itself is a small place, so bringing in from mainland, and I know some of you may have known those from Hong Kong who went there, came back in the process of things. So that's the focus of where Macau is. It has to depend more on those integrated resorts. Another depiction here showing the Venetian, where we'll have our session while we're there, on the Kodai Strip on the lower part of the map, and the upper part of the map there's sister property, the Sands Macau, which is really a gaming facility on the other side, but it gives you a little bit of the perspective of how the area is growing with private investment, and that's the key, private investment. And here's a very good rendering, I think, that depicts the area. If you look to the right-hand side, you'll see the Venetian. Just to the north of the Venetian is the Four Seasons. On the opposite side of the street, as you look at it here, the left side of the street would be the City of Dreams, and just to the north of that is the Sheraton. Now, that's under development, and then there are other properties in that immediate area under development. The Galaxy Hotel, which we'll see, if you look to the lower right side where that big lake is there, that is where the Galaxy is today. So it's across from the Venetian on that side. So that pretty much wraps up our discussion of the first part, and I'll continue on the second part with questions that we have regarding the points of size and also more about Hong Kong and where it relates to all of this. So.